So, contemporary approaches to landscape archaeology include a broad range of archaeological issues such as social organization, rural economy, and sacred space, trying to extract agency, ideology, meaning, memory, identity, social order, morality, and social transformation from the landscapes. While the last decades of landscape archaeological research in the Eastern Mediterranean and in the Mediterranean region in general have seen an intensification of interest in bringing together geographical, that is, concrete and descriptive forms concerned with determining the nature of and classifying places and the links between them, and sociological imaginations, that is, an aspiration to explain human behavior and activities in terms of social processes, abstractly constructed. Landscape archaeology has been seen by some archaeologists as the arena in which and through which memory, identity, social order, and transformations are constructed, played out, reinvented, and changed. Landscape, then, can be seen as the arena for social agency. Cypriot sacred landscapes are rarely examined in relation to political power, political economy, and ideology. Such landscape perspectives are absent from studies of the crucial transitions from the Cypro-archaic and Cypro-classical city kingdoms to the Hellenistic period, from the Hellenistic to the Roman era, and from the Roman times to early Christianity. Acknowledging the potential of landscape studies to provide a major source of new interpretations on the longue durée, this contribution should be regarded as a dynamic attempt to rework and re-experience not only the Cypriot sacred landscapes of various transitional phases, but also to further illuminate the political and socio-cultural histories of the Cypriot city kingdoms, the Hellenistic, the Roman, and the late antique periods when viewed independently. We demonstrate how a diachronic approach to Cypriot sacred landscapes, which includes ancient sanctuaries and early Christian basilicas, can open new interpretative windows impossible to reach without such a comparative approach. The study of Cypriot sacred landscapes within the longue durée, their transformations, and their possible change of meanings reinforce current interpretations suggesting that extra-urban sanctuaries played an important role in the political setting of the city kingdoms, which was transformed through time. Moving from the archaic and classical periods, that is, the period of many independent kings, the basileis, to the island-wide rule of the Ptolemaic general, the strategos, it has been discussed how Hellenistic urbanization, settlement patterns, social memory, and politico-religious ideology present a picture of a more unified socio-political sacred space. As shown in this figure, by the Roman period, many Cypriot extra-urban sanctuaries were deserted and only a few of them remodeled and enlarged. If we are going to understand this phenomenon, we have to move well beyond the Roman period, before and after, in order to insert the development of Cypriot sacred landscapes within their individual, contextual, insular developments. Excavation of extra-urban shrines of the archaic and classical periods has produced evidence which is also confirmed by systematic excavation activity and which highlights the role of the Cypriot Iron Age sanctuary as a focus of wealth disposal and economic control in the community. We have evidence for segmentation of space, consumption of food and drink, industrial activities, large-scale storage and display, and disposal of votive images related to royal ideologies such as the ones you see here. While sanctuaries become religious communal centers where social, cultural, and political identities are affirmed, an indication of the probable use of specific extra-urban sacred space in the political setting of the various city kingdoms has usually been observed. As I have argued in print on several occasions, the distribution of these sanctuaries, as you see on the map, across the landscape serve as a map for a sociopolitical system providing a mechanism for the centralized archaic and classical city kingdom authorities to organize and control their peripheries. Environmental and Geographic Information Systems analysis, GIS, employed by the Unlocking Sacred Landscapes of Cyprus, that is ANSALA-CY project, reinforce this argument about the territoriality of Iron Age Cypriot sanctuaries. The transformation of Hellenistic political topographies and the passing of Cyprus from segmented to unitary colonial administration under a foreign general, the strategos, brought a marked urban and extra-urban change. In a unified state which offers unlimited access to inland resources, official emphasis was placed primarily on urbanized and strongly Hellenized coastal centers for political, military, and economic reasons. The coastal cities such as Nea Paphos, you see here, Marion Arsinoi here, Kourion, Amathous, Soli, Salamis, mirror Ptolemaic strategic interests in coastal port bases and settlements, as well as a maritime activity and power. Although Cyprus was ready to adopt Hellenic forms of administration, it was indeed Ptolemaic rule, and particularly that of the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, that established city life and institutions such as bouli, gymnasia, and theatres in accordance with the cities of the Hellenistic world elsewhere. While we can usually assume the shape of the Hellenistic cities through the epigraphic record, the current remains of all the coastal urban centers date to the Roman period, and they fully adhere to the monumental character of the standard Roman city, as you see here. The gravitation of people towards these coastal cities was of greater historical significance. Several archaeological surface surveys on the island have noted a full Hellenistic and Roman countryside settlement pattern, which was followed by a general contraction during the 2nd through the 4th centuries AD. According to Marcus Rautmann, rural settlement began to decline around the 2nd century AD, as demonstrated by published survey data in Cyprus and elsewhere. Evidence of severe prosperity, which often is taken to represent the apogee of Roman Cyprus, is overwhelmingly urban and may have come about the expense of the countryside. The settlement patterns of the transitional phases, however, are not entirely consistent, and new regional archaeological surface survey projects need to address those issues, exploring pastoral, agricultural, and other economic activities, and how these are related to the various political situations and to the setting of the sanctuaries. We will preliminarily observe, however, that the widespread abandonment of the extra-urban shrines, no less than the elaboration of public cults in the cities, set the stage for profound social and religious reassessments that go back to the Hellenistic period and have to be studied within the context of the transition from segmented to unitary government and administration, as I mentioned before. Moving to continuity and abandonment in sacred landscapes, the importance of memory is a crucial factor. It is important to see sacred landscapes not simply as constructs, but as a complex and dynamic relation to Ptolemaic and later to Roman incorporation, and to investigate what was remembered, when, where, and how. The continuity or discontinuity of the extra-urban cult activity should be keyed to multipolar power relations and memory trends. Local and non-local elites, in their effort to define or redefine their relationships with the land for political and economic reasons, or in order to naturalize or legitimate authority, could have used sanctuaries to demonstrate their status. As the epigraphic evidence reveals, new social divisions and affiliations within Cypriot society as a whole, but also within individual communities intertwined with other sources of power, were also promoted through the very agency of cult. However, during the Hellenistic and Roman times, the need for political elites to define the link between territory and city for reasons other than administrative or economic should have become less and less important. If extra-urban sanctuaries played a frontier or a liminal role in the perpetuation of city-kingdom identities, now, under a new, unified political organization, eventually lost their territorial significance. The dedication of monumental statues in many extra-urban shrines by the Cypriot elite, imitating Ptolemaic prototypes, but at the same time adhering to the long typological and ritual Cypriot traditions, also reveals continuity in cult activity and traditions. The insertion of Hellenized and portrait-like features into statues whose general format remains strongly Cypriot might suggest a controversial ideological move. Not only the incorporation of Ptolemaic ideas and ideals into the Cypriot mentality, but also the accommodation of Ptolemaic rule into the Cypriot context, that is, the incorporation of Cypriot ideas and ideals into the Ptolemaic ideology. Within the material record, resistance could be expressed in a covert manner, involving the continuation of religious practices or the maintenance of a traditional material culture. Terms such as resistance accommodation and resistance adaptation have been widely used in contemporary archaeological literature to indicate that resistance was not an either-or proposition, but rather an ongoing, subtle, and usually muted process. In time, and when reaching the Roman period, many of the elites of the city kingdoms would have disappeared or been suppressed. By the 1st century AD, therefore, when a more unified and centralized politico-religious system seems to have been well established, the tradition of dedicating limestone portrait-like sculptures in extra-urban sanctuaries eventually dies out, along with the majority of the long-standing extra-urban sanctuaries. After the early Roman period, we find hardly any limestone portraits in the Cypriot sanctuary. They all belong to the funerary sphere, carved on a number of grave reliefs such as those you see here. The material culture of Cypriot sanctuaries of the Roman period clearly manifests that identities and modes of self-expression had significantly shifted and transformed. Religion represents a close linkage between local cult and local identity. Although we cannot simply speak of many cultural identities in Iron Age Cyprus, the shifting from many political city identities to one had consequences such as the interruption of promoting particular local cults. In addition, just as people move in the landscape, creating, modifying, destroying, or abandoning places or institutions, in the same way their identity is defined, redefined, or restricted. Such an embodiment could enable us to define how people transformed their identities through landscapes, and at the same time how landscapes themselves were transformed, adapting to the new socioeconomic relations, as well as to the new sociopolitical identities and memory realities. Changes that occurred on different levels in Hellenistic and Roman societies influenced the religious sphere, cult practice, and consequently the sacred landscapes. On the other hand, sacred landscapes themselves should not be seen as a passive reflector of social practice, but rather as an active expressor of it. Functioning under a new, unified politico-economic system, sacred landscapes ease the transformation of human identities and the perception of space. The image of the Cypriot goddess is a paradigmatic example for illustrating the transformations which occurred as the island moved from segmented to unitary government and administration, and the complexity of that process. Her artistic representation on sculpture and terracotta figurines, for example, show how by the Hellenistic and later by the Roman period was fully Hellenized, conforming to the iconography of Greek Aphrodite. Moving from stylistic to cultic analysis, however, is simply impossible without considering the fact that some local particularities in her cult survive well beyond the end of the Hellenistic period. The most illustrative example comes from the archaic cult place of Aphrodite in Palepaphos, which under Ptolemaic and Roman rule was developed into a pan-Cyprian sanctuary, and where strong epigraphic evidence for the practice of the ruler and imperial cult exists. Not only the architecture of the sanctuary remains close to the traditional Cypriot temenos from the late Bronze Age to the end of the Roman period, but also the cult statue of the goddess keeps the iconic shape of a bedyl, as you see here. Such continuity should be viewed in relation both to the local cultural identity and the character of politico-religious agency and ideology, which through various accommodations and transformations seems to reproduce the established sociocultural norms. Nevertheless, as well as documented evidence from epigraphy or the diachronic study of cult in excavated sanctuaries such as those of Palepafos in Amathus reveal a more unifying reorganization of cult can be noted during the Hellenistic and Roman periods. Changing economic conditions within the Cypriot cities under a unitary government and administration also entail some significant changes in financing, and as a result, in the sociological structure of their religion. In the Hellenistic and especially in the Roman periods, financial management eventually shifted from the city-state to a more unified and centralized control. The most important bearer of a unifying ideology, as you see on the slide, should have been played by the Kinon Kyprion, that is the Union of the Cypriots, dedicated to the promotion of the Ptolemaic and later the imperial cult. Among the large distribution of settlements in the various published archaeological survey projects and the Cyprus Survey Inventory, I have located only 23 sites that might have functioned as a sanctuary ex novo in the Hellenistic period. Next to the Ptolemaic official attention towards all traditional urban sanctuaries, Greek-style temple architecture, as you see here, is added to the Cypriot sacred landscapes quite late in the Hellenistic period, not in the extra-urban environment of Cyprus, but in the direct environs of the major urban centers, where Ptolemaic power and cult would have been practiced more markedly. On the other hand, during the early Hellenistic period, sanctuaries ex novo, such as that of Soli Cholades, with strong allusions to the Ptolemaic cult, are built following the traditional Cypriot architecture of the Iron Age Temenos, probably drawing on the existing religious sentiment and cult. As mentioned before, by the Roman period, many inland Iron Age extra-urban sanctuaries were deserted and only a few coastal sanctuaries remodeled and enlarged. Some of those sanctuaries, such as that of Apollo at Kourion and Aphrodite at Amathus, also received monumental podium temples. Okay, so summarizing the evidence presented so far, it becomes clear that the state revenues, financing for state festivals, and the building and upkeep of sanctuaries went towards more prestigious, high-status urban sanctuaries such as those of Aphrodite in Palepafos, Amathus, or of Zeus in Salamis. This helped create a more unified national politico-religious identity. The primacy of these sanctuaries by the Roman period is confirmed by Tacitus in Annales, who remind us that the Senate confirmed their rights of amnesty in 22 AD. Over the next 200 years of this cult, these cults increasingly became associated with the island's identity as a Roman territory. Images of the Palepafos sanctuary and the standing figure of Zeus Olympios, as you see here and here, appear both singly and paired on coins issued by the Kinon Kyprion for the 1st through the 3rd centuries AD. The heavy promotion of these primary shrines, together with temples of the imperial cult at Nea Paphos and Kourion, for example, may be seen as part of Roman efforts to unify and consolidate the island province. Following the Severan period, we know very little regarding Cypriot sacred landscapes during the 3rd and 4th centuries AD. The stratigraphy, material culture, and architecture related to the post-Severan sacred landscapes remains to be identified, published, and sufficiently analyzed. We hope that scholarship will soon manage to fill or explain the gap we currently face during the 3rd and 4th centuries AD. Following the Severan period and the social transformations taking place during late antiquity, that is late 4th to middle 7th centuries AD, the urban temples of Cyprus eventually start declining. A weakened economy and the subsequent imperial neglect during the 3rd century AD contributed to fundamental social realignments and dramatic ideological shifts, and thus town councils and magistrates did not maintain declining sanctuaries, which were eventually closing because of earthquake damages during the mid-4th century AD. The official establishment of Christianity, the economic prosperity that Cyprus started enjoying, and the shift of political control at the local level from imperial families to Christian elites and bishops contributed to the transformation of the sacred landscapes and townscapes of Cyprus. Cypriot bishops worked in the shadow of damaged temples at the urban environments of Paphos, Amathus, Kourion, and Salamis, resacralizing space by building cathedrals and other large basilicas to renovate parts of their flourishing cities. During late antiquity, settlements and new cult sites dating to the 5th century AD, like basilicas at Carpassia, Lapithos, and Tremithus, just to mention a few, document both the expansion of rural settlements and the successful Christianization of the countryside. GIS mapping and analysis of Cypriot late antique churches in relation to the road networks and arable land reveal, similarly to the function of ancient sanctuaries, the function of these countryside basilicas in the context of economic and symbolic landscapes. The analysis confirmed that Christian basilicas are found in association with rural establishments, that is, villages, local central places, that is, towns, agro-towns, and ports or coastal emporia, and other significant economic and communication nodes, that is, road networks, rivers, and agriculturally rich areas. In collaboration with my colleagues Athanasios Vionis, who just presented me today, and Dorian Nicolaou, since 2014, we established the Settled and Sacred Landscapes of Cyprus, CESALAC project, and since then, CESALAC is testing the above framework originally through archaeological surface survey and currently through excavation in the area of the Xeros River Valley in Larnakan district, with the modern village of Kofinu lying at its center. The work I present for the rest of my paper, therefore, is clearly a collaborative venture. Our investigation in the region of Kofinu has indeed provided a much more intensive late antique settlement activity in comparison to the preceding Roman era, around an early Christian basilica, as you see on the slide, dedicated to Panagia, that is Virgin Mary, dated to the late 6th century AD. The archaeological evidence, topographic parameters, an extensive surrounding agricultural territory, and comparative evidence from other excavated and surveyed archaeological sites suggest that in late antiquity, the site of Kofinu, around the Church of Panagia, played a central role within its settlement chamber or microregion, coincidentally overlapping with our survey area. The excavated basilica must have functioned as a focal point of the settlement, standing at its approximate center, dominating its immediate environs and marking a primary approach to the site. While the possible basilica under the ruins of a medieval chapel, as you see here, so here is a medieval chapel and here is a late antique basilica, the University of Cyprus started excavating this summer. This is the other chapel, and the University of Cyprus started this summer excavating here another possibly funerary basilica at the edge of the settlement. Such a secondary settlement in the countryside had a major role to play as local centers, that is, as important loci within the territory of their settlement chamber, acquiring an important role in agricultural production, processing and distribution of goods, and sometimes administrative functions as well. If then Kofinu comprised a second-rank settlement, which we have identified as Angro-town, one needs to identify the closest primary center of a regional central place and other minor rural establishments. Although this remains suggestive and guesswork at the stage, the region's primary center should have been the city and bishopric of Amathus, as you see here, at the edge of the present-day Limassol, 30 kilometers southwest of Kofinu. This interpretation may also be supported by later textual evidence. In this context, and it's worthy considering that, first, as one will expect this landscape, due to distance and modern affiliations, to be attached to the ancient city of Gideon, modern-day Larnaca, as you see here, how modern landscape divisions may affect our interpretations. Secondly, we should consider how a macrohistoric approach may help us better understand and identify ancient divisions of space. Our ceramic and archaeometric analysis from the site have shown that these landscapes during the Cypro-Archaic and Cypro-Classical times were belonging to the territory of Amathus rather than to that of Gideon. It becomes evident that basilica churches mark monumental space and features prominently within the settlement of some status in late antique Cyprus and beyond. Apart from their role as buildings of religiousness and piety or symbols of imperial ideology and Christian identity, churches become public meeting places and focuses of production, commercial and economic activities of civic and rural communities. Examples from different regions of the Eastern Roman Empire are indicative of the basilica's multiple roles. In urban environments, churches begin to encroach on the traditional public spaces. Such basilicas, usually of monumental dimensions, occupy part of the public area of the town, replacing in a way the Roman Forum, and dominate the townscape, fitting into the town's layout without necessarily becoming a haphazard conglomeration. The main basilica of Kurion can be a fine example of this. In peri-urban environments, extramural churches were usually placed along main road access, leading to the city in order to impress anyone traveling into the town. In a rural context, such as Kofinu, agricultural resources seem to have been directly associated with the siting of churches in late antique landscapes. Similarly to the ancient sanctuaries, late antique basilicas played an important role in inscribing social memory, territorial significance, and economic activities on the landscape. In this analysis, I have tried to integrate archaeological data with landscape theory and interpretative issues. Nonetheless, a further remark deriving from this macrohistoric approach in the framework of the Ansala CY and CESALAC research projects remains to be brought to the forefront more explicitly. The sacred landscapes of Cyprus should be seen in the framework of an insular scheme relating to the transition from segmented to unitary administration or politico-economic and ideological orientations and vice versa. Ancient extra-urban sanctuaries acting as symbolic, territorial, even liminal in some instances when coming to the so-called frontier sanctuaries, and economic nodes within and or between urban centers, second-rank settlements, villages, and farmsteads. And similarly, early Christian basilicas in the Cypriot countryside also acted as important symbolic and economic nodes within and or between urban centers, second-rank agro-towns, market villages or monastic centers in close proximity to regional central places or cities or bishoprics and satellite farm estates. It is clear that, as in earlier periods of Cypriot antiquity, at the transition from the Roman period to late antiquity, we move from half-empty to a half-full and later to a full sacred landscapes. This is a much celebrated phase of Cypriot religiosity, extending well beyond the limits of monocausal explanations. Without denying complex processes of transmission and transformation of culture, our approach remains deeply Cyprocentric and macrohistoric, actively situating external influences within local context, acknowledging, though, at the same time the capacity of the Cypriot insular habitual systems to accommodate and transform. This approach is particularly pertinent in the study of ancient Cypriot ritual and religion. Both individual projects under the umbrella of Ansala Research Network and our CESALAC Regional Surface Survey project in the Xeros Valley continue to add to the understanding of archaeolandscapes in Cyprus and beyond. A further mission of both projects is public engagement and service to society. We strongly support the idea that archaeology and classics can play a significant role in societal transformations, the main theme of this lecture. and the creation of a more human-centered and empathetic society. This is growing into a key role and a new phase for our project in the Xeros River Valley via the employment of community archaeology in the context of social service and responsibility. Xeros River Valley is a locus of both coexistence and conflict between Greek and Turkish Cypriots during the years of intercommunal unrest in the 1960s, a place of settlement of Greek Cypriot refugees, but also the abandonment of Turkish Cypriot quarters due to the population movements following the 1974 invasion. The centrality of this ancestral landscape in antiquity and its present abandonment are imprinted on collective memory and on the archaeological and modern landscapes. Abandoned Turkish settlements after the 1974 Turkish invasion and the division of the island, Christian and Muslim religious monuments, abandoned military bunkers on the hilltops around Kofinu from the period of intercommunal strife, the medieval tower and the Ottoman watermill of Alaminos, stone bridges of the British colonial period, abandoned beehives and other exceptional examples of historical archaeology comprise landmarks of this collective memory in the landscape of the valley today. At the same time, the presence and coexistence of these monuments in the Xeros River Valley in the 21st century reflect timeless and current phenomena: prosperity and symbiosis, displacement, immigration and human suffering, creation of national and religious identities, violent contestation, destruction of sacred sites and secular buildings, and abandonment. Our project has combined field archaeology with digital humanities, ethnography, psychology, cultural heritage management, and community archaeology, projecting this memory and historical identity of the communities in the Xeros River Valley through the ages. Focusing on two sites of sacred character, one related to Greek Cypriot Orthodox community, and that is the medieval church dedicated to Mary, and the other to the Turkish Cypriot Muslim community, that is a 20th century cemetery in the valley, we can demonstrate how cultural heritage studies can contribute to contemporary societal transformations, healing this sense of abandonment and negative collective memory that characterize the landscape today. The Church of Panagia Stasiotissa is a single-aisle barrel-vaulted church built during the Venetian period towards the end of the 15th to early 16th century. According to local tradition, the inhabitants of the area dedicated the church to Virgin Mary Astasiotissa, that is the patron of the grains, as the area was rich in cereal production. The church is a humble yet important monument for the local communities. It also comprises a landmark of collective memory in the modern history of the island and the creation of cultural, religious, and national identities. It has been a place of religious cult by Greek Orthodox Christians from the late Middle Ages to today. And during the period of the national struggle between Greek and Turkish Cypriots on the island, that is from 64 to 74, the church was not accessible by the Greek Cypriots. The abandonment and use of the church as a refuge by the Turkish Cypriot shepherds in the between 64 and 74 have left their irreparable marks on the monument. More than half of the wall frescoes bear marks of decay as a result of abandonment and neglect. Many locals recall that Turkish Cypriot shepherds lit fires inside the church when they used it as a shelter. The fires created a layer of soot over many of the wall paintings still visible as you see today. Other evidence of destruction on the painted walls, that is graffiti of dates, Turkish Cypriot names and symbols, date to the same period. We move now to the Turkish Cypriot cemetery of Kofinu. The Turkish Cypriots of Kofinu and the neighboring villages buried their deceased in this cemetery since the second quarter of the 20th century, as evidence from fragmented tombstones. Turkish Cypriots still visit their dead and leave flowers despite the current abandoned state of the cemetery, and there's also a lot of destruction in the cemetery. This is the south-east entrance of the cemetery, while there are two others in the north and the south. This entrance differs from the other two as it is higher than the closure wall and bears the emblem of the Turkish military group TMT in the center of its upper panel, as you see here. This gate leads to the resting place of those 24 Turkish Cypriots killed during the conflicts between the Greek Cypriot National Guard and the armed Turkish Cypriot group at Kofinu in 1967. And a wall separates these sections of the cemetery from the rest. Despite the feeling of abandonment of the cemetery, we can sense the special care that the Turkish Cypriot community has placed in honoring their dead for their sacrifice. As mentioned already, in the context of our landscape project, we initiated the ongoing abandonment project in collaboration with various other projects and organizations. Our initial purpose was to raise awareness for Huntington's disease, and Huntington's, or HD, is a neurological condition caused by an expanded gene in the DNA. We have organized lectures and psychotherapeutic seminars on abandonment from place to human beings, as well as photographic exhibitions based on crowdsourcing around landscape archaeology, but also collectible photographs available for sale exclusively in support of the association. Contemporary scholarship regards embodiment as a key approach to understand materiality, addressing the locus of the body as a material grounding for subjective experience, but also as the objectification of moral values and bodily ideas. Things like people have agency, or at least material objects are given meaning within agency. The characteristics of objects are important, but what manifests social power is a dialectic between landscapes, people, and things. Abandonment may take different forms and phases, usually intentionally or unintentionally, or as a result of coercion. We abandon objects, places, and people. Involuntary or voluntarily, we witness or perform our self-abandonment on a daily basis. Buildings, landscapes, objects that were once valuable goods or places of association are abandoned to time. Even more shocking is human abandonment, where individuals abandon themselves and their people, or are abandoned by them. Abandonment becomes even more severe when a neurological condition such as Huntington's disease is involved. This is the framework in which we operate these activities, bringing together public history, community archaeology, psychology, medical humanities, art, and cultural heritage. In addition, we have organized public days showing a documentary we produce and organizing a photographic exhibition in the Xeros River Valley. Among other monuments and sites in the area, we particularly focus on Astathiotis Church and the Turkish Cypriot Kofinu Cemetery. In our attempt to answer the basic question of who owes the past, we proceeded with engaging with the local communities by bringing the results of our field project and the region's natural and cultural landscapes closer to its present-day inhabitants through open days in combination with the development of a mobile application providing an on-site tour to landscapes and monuments in the Xeros River Valley. The ultimate aim has been to examine how residents and visitors in the Xeros River Valley make claims to remember and experience how residents and visitors and experience religious and secular monuments and their surrounding landscapes, while also investigating how claims are managed, negotiated, and contested by local communities and the state. An augmented reality mobile application developed in 3 languages, that is English, Greek, and Turkish, serving as both an on-site and off-site guided tour for visitors in the area. Our own experience with such an application employed for the first time in the cultural landscape of Cyprus and the creation and the reaction of the locals and other participants in the field highlight its potential in enabling archaeostorytelling, but also the narration and visualization of the historicity of the landscape and the fate of religious and other monuments of the past 1500 years. In addition, considering issues of inclusivity and trauma, This aspect of the project has brought to the forefront how archaeology and cultural heritage studies can contribute to healing this sense of abandonment and negative collective memory that, as I said, characterize the landscape today. I would like to conclude bringing in a challenging and unconventional dimension of the project, combining historical archaeology, cognitive psychology, and digital humanities to the Astafiotis Church. We are currently running an experiment using both qualitative and quantitative approaches, measuring and evaluating people from various background experiences of the monument. Thus, we hope to open up new horizons and opportunities, moving from oppression to freedom, for the exploration of memory, experience, and perception of this religious space and its historical fate. We believe that this particular monument, as well as the Kofinu Cemetery, give rise to new forms of negotiations, strengthening the development of social resilience and contributing to resilient societies. Finally, Dr. Francesco Ripanzi, who is here with us today, in collaboration with the project, is currently completing his Marie Curie Fellowship to work on addressing how archaeology can promote community well-being in the Mediterranean context by focusing on the inclusion of persons with disabilities. As you may have heard from his paper about linking community archaeology and well-being in the Mediterranean, or the Loggia project, Xeros River Valley is one of the two main case studies. The interest to add the well-being elements to the engagement strategy of the Valley and the collaboration with the Loggia project builds on our previous work and vision of the potential role of cultural heritage, archaeology for well-being, and societal transformations. The project ran in the Valley recently following a co-design project initiated with the Cyprus Institute of Neurology and Genetics and the Cyprus Alliance for Rare Disorders, and was implemented with the support of 3 municipalities in the Valley, the Bishopric of Trimithous, and the Archaeological Research Unit of the University of Cyprus. We use the sacred landscapes and memories of the Xeros River Valley to embark on a journey of abandonment with local communities, individuals from other areas of Cyprus, and Huntington disease community. We built a 6-session program that consisted of tailor-made indoor and outdoor activities using photography, contemporary ritual, on-site tours, and participatory activities, that is cleaning innovation ruins, and cooperative organization of an exhibition to stimulate conversations around abandonment. The activity was already being piloted in the European Huntington Disease Association Conference in Bologna, in Italy in 2022, and in Blankenberg, in Belgium in 2023. Using photographic images with an archaeological theme from the exhibition Abandonment, From Landscapes to Mindscapes, displayed during the conference, participants have reconsidered or reflected on some aspects of their own lives and experiences expressed in a sequential memorial process moving from landscapes to mindscapes. The collaborative exhibition took place on 9 of December 2023 and included activities for children and a Christmas market organized in collaboration with the Huntington's Disease Association of Cyprus with the aim to raise awareness about the disease. Each session was evaluated using questionnaires distributed before and after the activities. Participants were interviewed during the program and after 6 months to gather more qualitative data. The quantitative data collected through questionnaires, currently analyzed by Francesco, confirmed an increase in participants' well-being. The total number of participants varied from a minimum of 7 to a maximum of 16, and most were between 30 and 50 years old, with only 4% from the Huntington community, highlighting actually the difficulties in engaging families with such challenging and stressful issues in such activities. From the qualitative feedback, we know that the participants appreciated the opportunity the program provided in terms of socializing, exchanging views, collaborating with other participants, visiting new places, and the chance to think creatively. In any case, these kind of activities in the Xeros River Valley have provided some food for thought on opportunities and challenges related to motivation, involvement of vulnerable groups, and longer-term evaluation, which can be inspiring for both archaeology-based well-being interventions and citizen science programs in Cyprus, and eventually to be transferred in other Mediterranean countries. Last but not least, I should just mention the initiation of a new project in Greece. In collaboration with the clinical psychologists and psychotherapists, we develop a technique employing landscape, history, and archaeology, and the so-called systemic sculpture therapeutic method. Systemic sculpture, like psychodrama, is an experiential or creative technique within the framework of systemic theory and therapy, aiming to provide a somatic experience that will affect the change of internal automatism of people in solving their personal blockages. Difficulties that only to a certain extent can be influenced by intellectual type of dialogic therapy. At a later stage, we plan to move this project to the Xeros River Valley in Cyprus, as we believe that systemic sculpture addressed to both Greek and Turkish Cypriots in this landscape, directly related to the valley or not, but also to other groups, has a lot to contribute to the healing of memory and traumas, and thus to significant social transformations. And with this, I need to thank you very much for your attention.